US survivalists just mastered something terrifying. While the mainstream media is obsessed with tanks and missiles, a secret war has moved into your medicine cabinet. China and the BRICS alliance have officially pulled the chemical kill switch, cutting off 95% of the ingredients for our pain relief. We are talking about a total pain blackout. No Tylenol, no Advil, and no hospital anesthesia. We are weeks away from a reality where a simple toothache or a broken bone becomes a nightmare. But while the government panics, a group of rogue researchers has rediscovered the atomic joker hiding in plain sight. Big Pharma's pain monopoly is being torn apart by a common weed that grows in the cracks of your sidewalk. It is a plant so powerful it was used to perform surgery on bloody Civil War battlefields, yet it was scrubbed from our history books. Why did they want us to forget this forbidden milk? And what happens to the billion-dollar drug industry when you realize the cure is free? Hospitals across the United States are now locked in a silent siege. The enemy isn't a virus or a foreign army, it is a chemical supply chain, with a single point of failure thousands of miles from any emergency room. Nearly every painkiller in the American arsenal, from Tylenol and Advil to the anesthetics used in trauma bays, starts its life as a molecule built on a benzene ring. That ring is forged in petrochemical reactors, and today almost all the feedstock flows from overseas. Customs data and industry reports converge on a single, staggering reality. Up to 95% of the raw materials for these essential drugs are imported, with China holding the lion's share of production for phenol and its derivatives. Inside the pharmacy vaults, the countdown has already begun. Hospital administrators, armed with spreadsheets and supply chain dashboards, see the numbers shrinking day by day. The average American hospital maintains just weeks, sometimes as little as 21 days, of intravenous pain medication on hand. That's not a buffer, that's a clinical fuse. Once it burns down, the pain blackout hits. No morphine drips for the burn unit. No propofol for the next emergency C-section. A broken leg in a car accident becomes a medieval ordeal. This isn't a hypothetical. The just-in-time model, designed for efficiency, has turned every hospital into a forward operating base with no resupply line. The last time a global supply chain snapped, when COVID lockdowns rolled through Chinese ports, American hospitals rationed chemotherapy, antibiotics, and even saline. Pain relief was spared by luck, not strategy. Today, with a deliberate export chokehold, the margin for error is gone. The threat isn't limited to the medicine cabinet at home, it is systemic. Benzene and phenol aren't just chemical names, they are the keystones of modern pain management. Remove them, and the entire structure collapses. The United States once had the world's largest phenol plants, but decades of outsourcing and regulatory gridlock have left domestic production a shadow of its former self. Restarting a single benzene extraction unit takes years, not weeks. Building new capacity is a decade-long campaign, blocked by permits, environmental reviews, and billion-dollar price tags. The clinical clock is ticking. A 21-day window stands between routine surgery and battlefield triage. If the chemical tap is cut, the pain blackout rolls in, first the retail shelves, then the hospital wards, then the trauma centers where seconds count and anesthesia is the only shield against agony. The American pain system, once invisible and reliable, is now exposed as a single-source risk. The siege is real. The countdown is not in months or years, but in days. The question isn't if the buffer will run out, it's who gets left behind when it does. Along the Gulf Coast, a line of chemical plants sits idle or underutilized. Their smokestacks reminders of an era when American industry could pivot in a crisis. Today, these facilities are boxed in by a regulatory maze that makes rapid restart almost impossible. On paper, the United States still holds over 5 billion pounds of phenol capacity, spread across a dozen plants from Texas to Alabama. But the real bottleneck is not steel or skilled labor, it is paperwork. Any attempt to bring new benzene or phenol production online, or even to repurpose an existing refinery unit, triggers a cascade of environmental reviews under the Clean Air Act. The EPA New Source Review process is the first wall, air modeling, public comment, and best available control technology analysis can stretch for 2.5 years before a single pipe is laid. That is just the federal layer. State agencies like the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and Louisiana DEQ add their own reviews, stacking another year or two onto the timeline. If the site handles hazardous benzene waste, RCRA permits and corrective action plans are mandatory, tacking on another 6 to 18 months. Even with every box checked, a single public hearing or legal challenge can freeze progress for a year, sometimes longer. Capital costs are equally daunting. Building a new benzene extraction or phenol unit runs from $500 million to $2 billion. Adding a benzene tower to an existing reformer is cheaper, but still means hundreds of millions in new construction, plus skilled labor that is already in short supply. Engineering, procurement, and construction backlogs stretch out the schedule. Just fabricating a distillation tower can take 12 to 18 months. Even if every step is accelerated, the realistic timeline for a greenfield plant is 8 to 12 years. Repurposing an existing refinery might cut that to 4 or 5 years, if everything goes right. But in a crisis, there is no guarantee the supply chain will cooperate. Hurricane season, labor walkouts, or global steel shortages can all add months to the clock. Some point to emergency powers as a way out. The Defense Production Act, used during the COVID pandemic for PPE, can prioritize funding and fast-track some permits. The EPA has emergency waivers for monitoring and temporary Title V permits, but these are short-term patches, 180 days, maybe a year at most. The core construction and engineering cannot be waived. Even with every emergency lever pulled, the fastest possible restart for a mothballed plant is 6 to 18 months, and that assumes the feedstock is available and the equipment passes inspection. For a new build, the critical path is still measured in years, not months. There is no wartime precedent for accelerating benzene or phenol plants to operational status in under 2 years. This is the hard reality. The regulatory system was built for peacetime, not blockade. Each safeguard, air quality modeling, hazardous waste controls, public input, adds another layer of delay. In normal times, this protects communities from chemical fallout. In a supply crisis, it locks the country into a waiting game it cannot win. The chemical siege is not just a matter of foreign leverage, it is a domestic paralysis engineered by decades of environmental policy and economic outsourcing. With every legal barrier and construction delay, the American hospital system is left exposed, no way to outrun the clock, no rapid fix on the horizon. The search for alternatives is no longer a matter of comfort, it is a matter of survival. The record is not folklore or rumor. In the 1898 edition of the United States Dispensatory, Lactucarium stands shoulder to shoulder with the era's most trusted medicines. The entry is clinical, precise, no hedging, no mysticism. It reads, Lactucarium is the concrete juice of Lactuca virosa, a mild anodyne and hypnotic, used for its sedative effects in insomnia and in the cough of phthisis. The text prescribes a standard dose, 1 to 2 grains, administered in syrup or tincture. There is no warning label, no hint of fringe status. For doctors of the late 19th century, this milky extract was as legitimate as codeine or digitalis. Even the method is spelled out. Incise the stem, collect the white latex, dry it until it forms a brittle gum. The dispensatory notes its use for neuralgic and rheumatic pains, as well as for calming agitation in children. In a world before synthetic analgesics, this was not a desperate measure, it was protocol. The language is matter-of-fact, as if to say, here is a tool, proven by time and trial, catalogued for the next crisis. This is not a myth scrubbed from the record. It is a line item in the official medical arsenal, written in the same ink as morphine and quinine. The evidence is right there, in black and white. A Confederate field hospital pinned behind enemy lines, running low on morphine and chloroform. The blockade had choked off every shipment from Europe. Surgeons, desperate for anything to dull the agony of amputation, turned to the weeds growing along the edge of the camp. One entry from the Richmond Medical Department, dated 1863, describes it plainly. Lactucarium, prepared from wild lettuce, administered in syrup for neuralgia and dysentery. Opium of the poor. The process was crude but effective. Incise the thick stalks, scrape off the milky sap, dry it into a brittle gum. Mixed with water or whiskey, it was pressed into service for bullet wounds, shattered limbs, and the fevered nights when nothing else remained. Julian Chisholm, a Confederate surgeon, noted in his manual that wild lettuce extract was the fallback when the opium barrels ran dry. No one claimed it rivaled morphine, but in a war zone stripped of supply lines, it was the only shield left against raw pain. The latex was bitter, the dose uncertain, but the alternative was unfiltered suffering. After the war, as American pharmacies filled with German morphine and British codeine, wild lettuce faded from the official record. Its battlefield history was quietly shelved, written off as a relic of blockades and desperation. Yet the fact remains, when the chemical lifeline snapped, doctors reached for what the land could offer. No patents, no imports, just survival knowledge carved into the margins of medical archives. Deep inside the wild lettuce plant, a single chemical structure stands out: the peroxide bridge that gives lactucopicrin its punch. In the world of pharmacology, this bridge is not just a curiosity, it is a reactive loop of oxygen atoms, rigged like a hidden fuse. Chemists know this motif from artemisinin, the anti-malarial that changed global health. In wild lettuce, the same type of bridge is suspected to be the key to its pain-killing effect. Think of the peroxide bridge as a kind of volume knob wired directly to your pain circuits. Instead of flooding the brain with opioids, it modulates the signal, dampening the volume, not shutting it off. Lab tests on rodents tell the story in hard numbers. When lactucopicrin is administered, mice on a hot plate take longer to react to pain. At doses of 30 mg per kilogram, the effect rivals over-the-counter ibuprofen. No sedation, no staggering, just a measurable drop in pain response. In chemical terms, the bridge interacts with nerve cell proteins, possibly TRPV1 channels or glycine receptors, generating a subtle shift in how pain is processed. Unlike morphine, there is no opioid receptor activation, no respiratory depression, no addictive reward. The peroxide bridge is fragile. Break it and the analgesic effect vanishes. This is not a folk remedy running on wishful thinking. It is a structure-activity relationship confirmed in preclinical studies. The plant's chemistry acts as a regulatory dial, not a sledgehammer. In a world where every synthetic painkiller is chained to a foreign supply line, the wild lettuce peroxide bridge stands as a molecular loophole, one that cannot be patented, embargoed, or easily erased. Profit is the firewall that keeps wild lettuce out of the modern pharmacy. In the world of big medicine, a painkiller isn't just a molecule, it is a revenue stream guarded by patents and legal exclusivity. But wild lettuce and its extract, Lactucarium, are natural compounds. They cannot be patented, not under US law. The Supreme Court shut that door in 2013. You cannot claim a monopoly on what grows in the dirt. For pharmaceutical giants, that is a dead end. No patent means no market exclusivity, no billion-dollar launch, no incentive to bankroll clinical trials or national distribution. An intellectual property attorney quoted in 2021 industry panels put it bluntly: if a molecule can be picked from a field, it is commercially invisible. There is no IP moat, no investor wants in. That is the economic reality behind the silence. Even if lactucin could outperform ibuprofen in a lab, the business model collapses on contact with the open air. The cost of bringing a new drug to market, up to $2.6 billion for a single FDA approval, can never be recouped if anyone with a shovel can make their own version. The incentives are wired for synthetic exclusivity. Pharma's R&D engine runs on molecules that can be locked down, branded, and defended in court. A plant that anyone can grow is a threat, not a product. The system is not built for safety-first innovation, it is built for patent-first profits. That is why wild lettuce, with a molecular structure that cannot be owned, is left to the margins. Not because it is dangerous, but because it is unprofitable. Wild lettuce, or Lactuca virosa, does not hide in plain sight. It broadcasts its identity if you know what to look for. The first marker is the leaf. Long, deeply serrated, with a jagged outline that almost looks like it has been notched by a bayonet. Run your finger along the central vein and you will feel the spines, sharp, pale, and unmistakable even through gloves. These spined midribs are not decoration, they are the field signature that separates wild lettuce from its edible cousins. When you snap the stalk or score the leaf, a milky white latex oozes out. This is the Lactucarium, often called lettuce opium, described in 19th century dispensatories. The latex starts clear, but as it hits the air, it dries to a sticky amber resin. That is the active layer, and it is bitter enough to warn off most grazers. The plant stands tall, anywhere from 3 to 6 feet, often towering over roadside weeds and fence lines by midsummer. Look for it in disturbed soils, along train tracks, or at the edge of abandoned lots. The flowering head is another tell, a loose spray of small yellow blooms, each with a dandelion-like puff when gone to seed. Peak harvest is late spring through early fall, when the latex runs thickest. No shortcuts here. Field identification is the first line of defense. Mistake another plant and you risk more than disappointment. The spined leaf, the bitter latex, the tall upright growth, these are your checkboxes. In a world where painkillers can vanish overnight, knowing wild lettuce by touch and sight is the first step toward medical self-reliance. No plant, wild or cultivated, is a magic bullet. Wild lettuce, Lactuca virosa, carries its own risks. Toxicologists warn that misidentified plants can kill, and even the right species demands respect. The milky sap that holds Lactucarium also contains bitter sesquiterpene lactones. In high doses, these can trigger nausea, dizziness, or allergic reactions, especially in children, pregnant women, and anyone with ragweed allergies. No federal agency has approved wild lettuce extracts for pain, and the FDA classifies them as unproven drugs. Homemade tinctures vary wildly in strength, and a dose that eases pain for one person could send another to the ER. This is not a call to backyard chemistry. Responsible action starts with knowledge, not desperation. If you are considering any alternative, consult a licensed medical professional and verify with a toxicologist. Community labs and university extension programs can help with plant identification and safe extraction protocols. For those who want to contribute to medical resilience, join advocacy efforts pushing for open source research and domestic manufacturing of essential drug precursors. A dossier of historical documents, scientific studies, and field safety guidelines is available at the link below. Share it. Pressure policymakers to break the regulatory deadlock and fund independent trials. The first step to ending chemical dependency is radical transparency, starting with the truth and ending with action. Right now, a single supply chain rupture could silence every hospital's anesthesia, leaving American pain relief at the mercy of foreign petrochemicals and fragile logistics. The real war isn't on the battlefield. It is in the molecules we can't make fast enough. Medical sovereignty is now a survival skill. When the pain blackout comes, will we remember the weeds under our boots? Drop your perspective below. Civil defense begins with intelligence.